Because of where we are in the estuary, the river management that we do here is, as a coastal city, might be very different than, say, the river management that you would do even further upstream
Right.
in the Hudson, where it's a more freshwater system. And I think there's a number of factors that we can talk about that impact it. But not the least of which would be that we have tides, we have oceanic water. And then I think that there's unique differences in the difference of management between, say, a more rural or peri-urban area where you have different pollution inputs or different problems of land use that might be affecting river quality versus here where we have such
Right.
densely populated and heavily developed coastline and watershed. And so when we go out today,
But as I have taken little superficial, I must say, observation of the place, like because Bronx Community College where I'm teaching, in the vicinity only Harlem River flows, and beyond that I can see Hudson also. But then the way the characteristics of river is supposed to be, that means with the riparian zone and the floodplains, that's not at all there. It's all concretized on both the sides. Now river is as if flowing inside a channel. So how are we planning, or how are we trying to convince the government for such all things? Like now I see in Long Island also in many places that restoration is started. That means evacuating people from the encroached portions of the that sound, Long Island Sound, and that's what is the work started. But first of all we allow them, and then we ask them to leave, and then we give compensation also.
yeah, so there's you've touched on a number of issues that we could probably have a couple of courses on, but so let's see if I can start with the first question, which is about sort of the channelization and building of concrete and getting rid of sort of the green infrastructure, riparian zones around a park, getting rid of some of those things around there. So for years, I think especially in New York City, but not only in New York City, and I would say some of this is the result of our Dutch colonial legacy as well. We would fill in the waterfronts, especially wetlands were considered non-valuable, even problematic, that they were vectors of disease. It's where mosquitoes lived, and they would create all of these problems.
Good.
Doug, nice to meet you. And so you couldn't pull a ship up to a beach the same way you could pull it up to a pier, things like that. And so since the early days of European settlement in New York City, filling in the shorelines was sort of a priority number one. It was how they were creating economic value in the landscape. And then by the 20th century, we start seeing the automobile getting prioritized. And so people are working to build highways along our waterfront. By the 1950s, we have the entire island of Manhattan encircled by various roadways. And we start to realize, I think, that this is very problematic for our flood control. It completely cuts community access off. If you look at a map prior to the 1950s, we go back to the 1930s in New York City, you'll see that almost every street ends at a dock going out. And the highway cuts that all off. So we lose ecological connectivity, we lose access to the water resource, which has implications as well, right? I mean, it's harder for people to fish or go oystering or do other activities along there. And I think people become socially cut off from what the river can do. And it's been in the last, I'd say, 30, 40 years, but the movement is building to bring that connectivity back to our communities and to our waterfront. And so there's a number of groups and efforts that are working to restore green infrastructure to our waterways. Randall Island is one of them, but we work with a consortium of government, academic, and community partners to help identify everything from which parcels could be a good opportunity to start working with, which funding opportunities might help us whether it's resiliency or access or transportation. And then through these consortiums that have at different times are structured in different ways, but through these consortiums working to prioritize, where possible, returning green infrastructure. And I think one of the big challenges of implementing this too is when we talk about protecting our communities and flood protection or storm protection, the gray infrastructure has sort of a psychological impact of being safer, more secure, somehow more certain. And in some cases that's true, but it's certainly not the universal case that happens. And so another group that we work with through New York State is to identify
Sorry, folks.
is to identify how well green infrastructure can work to offer similar ecosystem service benefits or even property protection benefits.
Right.
And so there are groups like the Harlem River Working Group, the Urban Waters Federal Partnership for the Bronx and Harlem River, the New York, New Jersey Harbor Estuary Program, Riverkeeper, Bronx Council for Environmental Quality. All of them are working together in different ways to tackle these issues related to that. And then the other question that you brought up was related to sort of a forced migration of waterfront communities out of these floodplains and riparian corridors. And this really gets at the heart of a lot of issues related to policy, economic equity, historical legacy, and things like that. Many coastal wealthy enclaves, many coastal communities started off as subsistence fishing communities. Different parts of the United States have very different histories related to this. But in the New York area, you see a lot of our smaller coastal communities that didn't turn into large ports, really being these kinds of subsistence areas. But of course, the water draws people, and people want to move in and set up in them. So, on one hand, you have communities or legacies that may have been here for 150, 200, 300 years, 400 or more even. And then you have, on the other side, people who are building maybe second homes, vacation homes along coastal areas, or you have people who just see the value in it and want to build their homes there, even if it's their first home. But they have perhaps more economic mobility and the ability to leave or go somewhere else. And so I think it's important to parse out the important distinctions between these two in that, hold on one second. I think we can go in that way. This is Defoe here, so let me talk to, this should be him. And so let's put a pause in that, but there's a very big equity issue about even insurance for the damage to property that happens.
Efforts in like community projects beforehand, but the Randall Island Park Allaince was officially established in 1992.
1992. Okay.
It was called the Randall Island Sports Foundation.
It was called as?
When did they rebrand to RIPA?
I think, actually don't know that concrete answer. But it was first called the Randall Island Sports Foundation until it was rebranded into Randall Island Park Allaince. That is because, there are a lot of different interests in what this space could hold and what this space means to surrounding communities. And it is a large... there's a large athletic component that goes into Randall Island Park. We have the most sports fields in all of New York City located on the island. World-class tennis center, a world-class, sports facilities such as Icon Stadium. But it is a multifaceted space with a lot of dynamic elements, especially the restored natural areas. Also, Doug is one of our natural areas restorationists and educators too.
But that is why I am a bit worried. When I came for the first time here, and I had seen this wastewater treatment plant, such a big Watts Island.
Right.
And surrounding it is this all sports area. And when such a big treatment plant means it is spread in such a big area. That means from that area, then nitrous oxide and aerosols are generated a lot. More than what we say carbon dioxide as the greenhouse gas is the nitrous oxide which is produced a lot in from the STPs. So, and all around the place is the sports area. So how are you people trying to convince or try to work on this issue? Because I started with the wastewater treatment plant study, and I had visited Randall Island treatment plant, and I saw that actually this treatment plant is not about more treating the water, but it's more like a resource recovery. Nowadays there is a fashion, I must call, that treatment plants have become like a resource recovery for the nutrients.
It does both, right? So it's a resource recovery facility is the name they've given it, but the facility itself is working to treat water in order to meet their requirements that they have with New York State through the federal legislation of the Clean Water Act. So the DEP plant is required to can only release water that meets a certain standard before it's allowed back in the environment. So Dr. Dandi, how comfortable do you feel walking on maybe some uneven surfaces? So Randall's Island has about 4.5 miles of coastline around the park. As you know, some of it is the wastewater recovery facility, and the rest of it is pretty much open parkland. And unique to most of New York City, it's actually accessible waterfront. So although we do have vertical seawall in a lot of spots, there's very little fencing that keeps people away from getting to it. And it's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, and is sort of a nice little niche that we have here as part of our waterfront in the middle of New York City. The Randall Island Park Allaince has worked to restore and build back the shoreline as it's eroded in many different ways. And so this is one of the last sections that got a renovation treatment. The shoreline here around Randall's Island, the natural shoreline in the 19th century, would have been much smaller, and they used various materials, mostly like coal slag, so the unburnt remains of heating indoor facilities in the 19th and early 20th centuries to fill in our shoreline, along with any other material that they could kind of get their hands on. And they would continue to sort of expand it outwards. So when you look at this hill here, this hill would have been more or less a natural topography, but moving down through the hill and out into the water, all of this would have been things that were human created. To the point that when we were actually doing our studies here and reconstructing the shoreline, they dug a 15-foot hole and found a cobblestone street where the cobbles were so tightly put together that even with their modern equipment, they spent like 3 days trying to just dislodge the cobbles in order to get below that. But then there's all of that land and fill on top of there, which were things that we didn't necessarily, today we know we wouldn't want to put in the water in a public park, like coal slag. And so as we were building our shoreline here, we had to kind of confront those problems and come up with adaptation measures as we were moving through it. So we'll take you down to...
So now what is being constructed is the same which you are talking about?
No, so this is actually different now. So about 2 years after we constructed the shoreline, which we'll show you, the Triborough Bridge Authority, which is the agency that takes care of this bridge over here, decided to build new pedestrian ramps from Manhattan. So in one sense, this is a good thing because it's now providing better access for the communities who live in East Harlem to be able to walk over the bridge and access the largest dedicated green space in their community, which is Randall's Island Park. It is challenging in other ways because it, on a micro level, it segments this site. So instead of it being sort of one contiguous area, we're going to have a giant piece of infrastructure that sort of separates it.
Yeah.
It definitely is a disturbance to the landscape, but
this is under the restoration.
this is not part
no?
of the restoration.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is part of the bridge.
Okay, infrastructure only.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so everything that we're going to talk about related to the restoration kind of
Yeah.
takes place from this pathway towards
Okay.
the water.
Okay.
And in fact, some of these trees are some of the older trees here in the park going back into the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
But
Some of the
for making this particular pathway, did they cut some trees?
They did have to cut some trees, but this was actually after they looked at multiple pathway routes. This was specifically because of the trees, the path of least resistance. So this was the route that was going to cut the fewest trees down.
Okay.
And New York City has a compensatory plan for cutting down trees. So any project that needs to remove canopy is required to either pay a cash value for that canopy or replace a similar amount of canopy in kind. And it was both undesirable and cost prohibitive for the project to cut down these larger trees. So they chose this route instead. So the first thing I wanted to show you that we had done here was install survey markers.
Okay.
So these survey markers show us where we were at with sea level when they were. So this is providing us a benchmark where we can now measure the other shoreline features against sea level rise over the next 50 to 100 years. So as I mentioned, the human-made seawall here is stacked stone. There's no mortar or cement that's holding it in. And that means that when the water goes in, it's able to remove fine sediments and silts back out into the water. It's not without its habitat value. All of those rocks, all of the interstitial areas along the shoreline provide important habitat for different organisms that live here. We'll find sometimes through here mussels and oysters. Inside the cracks, if we were to shine a flashlight in right now, we'd probably find about 2 different species of crab that live in there, as well as crabs that are living along the shoreline there. And then I'm going to take us to walk around.
These ramps are for the ferry? Ferries come?
It's not an active ferry service,
Okay,
so
okay.
it's a commissioned ferry service. So when like a large event comes here, they can pay to have ferry service bring people to the event. But otherwise, it's not like a commuter ferry.
Okay.
I'm gonna take us to another location where we'll be able to see the tide pools.
Right.
But
Yeah,
this
I
is
wanted to see the tide pools.
This is an important feature here, and I don't know. Were you talking with Diati about these? Rafaela Diati at BCC.
Yeah.
So she's been studying these
Okay.
with her students for the last couple of years, but we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
So the idea here was to replace some of the stones that had been eroded away or had fallen in, to put together a native plant palette that went along the stretch of the coastline here, which we'll walk along, which provides habitat for wildlife. It provides shoreline stabilization as the roots can hold in
But
sediment.
what is that material made of, these tide pools? Because they are also like concrete.
Yeah, so it's a special material called e-concrete, which uses a proprietary blend of cement making in order to be more biophilic and recruit organisms.
That's what everybody is saying. It's
Yeah.
biophilic. But then, what is the material?
So
I have
it's,
been asking, what is it made up of?
it's a cement material. You can check with them. It is a proprietary blend, and they do have a number of white papers that they've put out over the years that talk about how their material provides.
So, is there something with you?
better
Some
habitat.
copy, some material is there?
I can certainly
You
share
please
with
share
you
that.
their website.
Yeah. Because this is like we are again concretizing the area.
So yes, but we are also using a textured substrate and one that's not going to be leaching the same kinds of chemicals that a traditional concrete blend is going to do, and therefore it becomes something that provides habitat in this context.
So
And we would call this a hybrid infrastructure, not a gray or green infrastructure.
that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because when I was hearing about it, that such kind of tide pools are being put on the like embankments, So how it can be useful when it is a concrete substance? So that's what I was thinking. So I wanted to see how is the tide pools are and how they give space for the organisms for its habitat and all that.
So we'll go check out one where we can get a really close look at the special texturing that they use on it.
Yeah.
But the same way that if you look at our seawall here and you can see that it's the stacked stones,
Yes.
versus right across the river where
Right.
you have a flat, smooth vertical surface.
Right.
That flat, smooth vertical surface, although neither of these would be, say, preferable to a natural rocky shoreline or a wetland habitat, you've immediately created more opportunity on this shoreline than you do see on the one over there. So let's say we have zootonic plankton that are floating around, maybe larvae for oysters. Those organisms have a harder time attaching to anything on that sidewall than they're able to do over here. And so I think the idea was not to create necessarily a soft edge, but to soften the edge and create something that could be a richer opportunity for habitat than what was existing there before.
So can we have a close look to
Yeah,
this?
so we're going to walk down to the other end unless
Okay.
you're comfortable. This space is a premium here.
So they may be expanding it up to here. This road.
No, they're just using their store. They're just using this as storage.
Okay.
This is all going to be put
Put
there
there.
as they pour the concrete. So because this is space is at a premium, the idea was not to turn this exclusively into a natural area, but to provide a hybrid opportunity again for passive recreation like picnicking and barbecuing, as well as for environmental services. So if you look right behind you here, you'll see there's an accessible picnic area and accessible from the standpoint of people with disabilities. There's opportunities for wheelchairs to pull up there. There's paved pathways. There's access to water all over there. And we'll see when this isn't closed off that it's an extraordinarily popular site for birthday parties and family gatherings during the summer where you have shade in a lovely area along the water.
So they do birthday parties and all here?
Yeah.
But then what about the garbage and all which is produced? They maintain or how is what the issues we face then?
So you'll see we have garbage cans
I
and
have
trash
seen,
receptacles there, and then we
yes.
have a regular staff here at the organization that is responsible for helping to pick up the garbage all throughout the park. If we see parties setting up, oftentimes we'll even hand them a garbage bag to begin with. And that's how we keep it clean. This area hasn't been as well maintained as it usually is, again, because it's not technically open to the public right now because of construction. This is here, we put this protective fencing just to allow the vegetation to establish itself, but that's the only purpose, is just to keep people, it's an exclusion fence for people right now. Once we've properly established this habitat, we can consider removing the fence. I'll show you another example here, but we created these sort of scallops in the shoreline, where the first layer of the scallop has some intertidal marsh plantings. As you move up, we get into a high marsh type habitat, so plants that can be flooded regularly during the tides, plants that can be flooded sort of during flooding events or extraordinarily high tides, and then we get into this sort of upland habitat that we're seeing here. So all of these plants can handle having salt spray, saltwater intrusion in their root zones.
But there's not much mangroves I can see.
No, we don't really have mangroves in this part of the world. The only part of the continental United States that has mangroves is really like Florida, parts of the Gulf Coast.
But as we have here brackish water, I think we should have more of that, because that will give a better habitat for many organisms.
Yeah, so the mangroves that we have here in this country don't really, it's the temperature that gets them. Yeah, they don't survive this far north. So we do find them.
That opening which I'm seeing, is it the
habitats.
drainage?
So
Drainage opening?
Do you see the green sign next to the opening?
Yes.
So that green sign marks that it's what we call a combined sewage overflow, or CSO.
Okay.
And so that means that all of the stormwater that drains through, likely that complex or straight down the street often sometimes. On a dry day, there's probably no discharge. So since we haven't really had any rain in the last few days, there's probably nothing coming out of it. But once we get a
But
little
did you check any time or any monitoring is being done that during the dry season that there is no CSO?
Yeah, so there are multiple organizations that do that, including us. So the first is DEP, and they're testing the center channel at multiple intervals over the course of the season, I think once or twice a month, to see that there's compliance with the stormwater discharges. And that's somewhat accurate. There's also a consortium of waterfront advocates and recreationalists, including ourselves, who have been collecting bacterial samples every week from May through early October. And that also tells us it gives us an idea of whether or not there's fecal bacteria that we're finding in the water as a result of discharges.
Because in case there are many, this CSOs, the network which is there, that too has a fixed capacity to carry that. And in case some buildings or infrastructure has come up, that also increases the load. Another thing about these networks are that they are not changed. Actually, they are supposed to be every 30 years there has to be change, but that is not possible also.
So they work. The city works through 20-year long-term control plans where they have to work with state officials again in order to meet the compliance with the Clean Water Act on what adaptive measures that they're able to do. I think the language is reasonably possible. So they're not required to completely solve the problem, but they're required to show measurable improvement on the system. And the way that they do that is, yes, when you add more toilets to a system, the system stops having the capacity to handle it.
Not only maybe certain hotels or such kind of establishments which come up, and can you tell me that what is in the vicinity, what kind of industries or establishments?
I just want to quickly end on that last question. Sometimes when there is rezoning and you are increasing the number of housing inside of a watershed or a sewer shed in this case, they will work with either the developers or the city itself will pay out in order to increase the capacity to absorb the sewage. The big issue with dry weather discharge is less to do with adding more new units to a system, and in my experience more to do with aging infrastructure. So areas that were either never properly connected in the first place or areas that haven't been able to maintain it, and now you have cracks in the system, and that's where we found that. And again,
It's also in the vicinity.
You're good.
I'm just telling you. Now, when I have worked on the Ward Island, this treatment plant, one thing you people can ensure that when the water coming in flow inside the treatment plant, it has to be only the fecal matter. That means drainage only. But today what is happening in the wastewater treatment plant, all water are coming together, which we then call it as CSOs coming. Means storm water and drainage water all coming together. But here when in the treatment plant, whatever the water has to come, it has to be only the drainage fecal water. Not the other grey water and other our house water. It doesn't require so much of treatment what it should come to the treatment plant. Treatment plant only fecal matter. But at the same time, because see, when it is coming in lot of diluted way, then what is happening? That because of the dilution, proper molecular breakdown is not happening, because it's getting diluted. Because when it is in concentrated, if I suppose in the bioreactor they are having a bioenzymatic or a microbial degradation, but it is not able to do it because of lot of dilution. Because if in America per person per capita water to per person is 280 liters, you multiply it with that much of number of population, that means such a lot of water coming to the treatment plant. There's no need. Because other water, grey water and other black water can be separate, and other water can be separate, which needs actual treatment. So if that comes and treated, still it is understood, but it's not happening today in the treatment plant.
Yeah.
One thing is about dilution. Second, I will tell you about the aeration which they are doing. Aeration, almost 75% cost of the treatment plant goes in the aeration. There is no aeration required because the bacteria which works, bacteria doesn't work on the atmospheric air. It will, by means of oxidation, it does the work. You know how curd is formed? When we are putting it in the milk, a little curd culture, it will automatically make the curd. So you don't require stirring continuously. So you just leave it. So aeration is another issue.
Is the aeration also treating other chemicals?
No, not at all. It's only dependent on the bacterial molecular breakdown, okay, which is not happening first of all. So main two things, one dilution, another is aeration, which is totally flawed. Third thing about it is actually the treatment of fecal matter cannot happen in the treatment plant, which is a totally flawed kind of a thought and understanding. If you remember, or if your grandparents must have said to you in earlier times, whatever the fecal matter, it used to come and meet with the soil. Now soil microbes and the fecal matter microbes, when they have the synergy, that time it works, the microbes work, and then the degradation happen, but not in the treatment plant. So what is happening today in the treatment plant is lot of sludge formation, and that then goes to the as a biosolids we call it as, and then we take it to the landfills. But we are carrying what? We are carrying all pathogens there. That means again from the treatment plant we are carrying all to the landfills.
So they make sterile biosolids that they're putting out here.
They say that because see they then again say that they put it to the digester. But there also see in an artificial condition bacteria doesn't flourish. Because see that's why it is always said that bacteria can live without us, but we cannot live without bacteria. Because that is the potential of the bacteria. And like in our system of treatment plant, again what we do, we take it to digester and we are also doing the dewatering. That means we are removing water. So that's why water resource recovery we are calling it as. We are bringing so much of water which is not required, and again we are trying to dewater it by the centrifuge mechanism and other things. So there is a lot of things which these designs which are there, civil engineering designs which are there, technology which has been fit, it is as per very old kind of thoughts and the designs which were given when there was no microscopes even. Today such a high level microscopes are there with the magnification and all, that we understand what kind of microbes are there. So with that we need to understand. Earlier because they could not identify microbes, they could not see what the molecular level reactions were happening. Now everything can be seen. So when we understand that these microbes need only in a natural way that they cultivate or the culture happens, how we are thinking that it will happen in the bioreactors in the system, and that too by giving them again dilution and aeration. So that is why it is not happening. And instead if you just walk down inside this treatment plant, you will also find a lot of birds sitting on every tank. Lots of. And they are sitting in the water also on sides also. That means lot of shit also droppings is there, as well as these birds are taking water or whatever the organisms they are picking up, because small insects and all are there. So by means of that again as we see that today birds are also not able to lay good kind of eggs. Their shells are becoming very soft, or they are not able to give more birth to the new birds or the young ones. So these are the things which is happening. And at the same time, when I saw the flow of every tank water, last tank also I could see nitrification happening. Okay, and that water again getting discharged into the East River. So that's what makes me understand that it's not the question of only Ward Island. Let me tell you, every literally single STP is in the world doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe disagree again about the connection to the eggs. The number one bird we see there are gulls, and the gull populations are doing quite well in terms of their reproduction and their area here. It's not like we're seeing a crash in our gull population, specifically the ones right around the wastewater treatment plants as well, that tend to be doing well. And I'll say, I haven't personally tested the water discharged out of the wastewater treatment plant, but I know that they are being held to a standard that it meets the total maximum daily load for.
So that's
can
what
be
they were.
discharged into the
That's
water.
what they were telling me also. But when I went there and I saw all the tanks literally polluted and even having the trashes also in the secondary also, then they said there is some leakage and that needs to be corrected. That's what I was said. Okay. So that's okay. Even I understand if there is some fault or some corrections which are supposed to be done. But then I am sure that this particular, and see in the last stage also when they are treating it with for the disinfection with the sodium hypochlorite, but that's not able to kill the pathogens, and we are treating it for that purpose, and it's not treating that. So we need to, when the discharge is happening, that water also needs to be studied, and I am sure that things are not, because as such we don't have to even, that's why I did not do the sample analysis. Why? Because when we study about the principles of sewage, the basics science of sewage, we come to understand that what is the flaws which is happening, and that's not the correct way of doing things. So from that point of view, I'm telling you right now.
All right. Well, it's definitely something to continue looking into. I think one of the largest problems we have facing the waterway that we experience, though, because again, we'll test on dry weather days and we'll test on wet weather days. The biggest correlation that we see related to fecal pathogens in our waterway as it's from discharge areas and it's after wet weather events, and oftentimes related to poor flushing.
But river keepers on their site, I have seen continuously they have shown enterococcus in the dry season. So like
In the dry season,
Yeah.
or
dry. Only dry season data they have put it in. River keeper has put it in the website.
so I know that
I'll check that.
we find pathogens in the water outside of heavy rain events, but we find that the pathogens go up to frequently exceed unacceptable levels for human interactions in about 72 hours after major storm events, and that's almost consistent across every sample that we get. We also
So
see
that is my major concern. We have to change this system of treatment plant itself, because we have to go for more like what you people are doing, the wetlands.
Yeah.
Wetland is the natural way of going ahead with the treatment of this fecal matter or any sewage matter is only the right way of doing things.
So it's a good thing, it's interesting you bring that up. One of the things that we study here is how long does it take for restored systems to be able to provide the kind of ecosystem services that you're referring to jumpstart or to facilitate denitrification at an appropriate level. And one of the things that we have found is that it takes years, if not decades, in order for those systems to establish the kind of denitrifying bacteria in their soils to support that. And then at the scale at which we would need green infrastructure in order to support or replace what the gray infrastructure is trying to do at a concentration, you will hear no argument from me that a place like New York City is an unnatural system. It is absolutely an abomination of the rules of nature.
But
for
natural
how-
can easily happen. That's why I
communities
said the diluted water, because it is coming to the treatment plant.
Yeah.
Today you are calling it as it is 275 million gallon capacity treatment plant. Why we are calling it as so much gallon? Because we are bringing all water to it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with that either. Actually, Randall's Island is not a combined system, so you're seeing the green systems over there, but a number of parts of the city, specifically Randall's Island here, usually coastal areas, and the further if you went further south in the harbor, you would find more of these systems, or what's known as MS4, separate sewer systems, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
That's only 40%.
That's what?
40%
of the system. But but Randall's
Yeah, it
Island's
has
part of
started
that
like a new
40%.
system. But then
And it's not even necessarily a new system. If anything, it's almost an older system because it was designed to keep these were designed in order to send things to the wastewater treatment plant. The MS4 systems were usually designed without having the wastewater treatment plant accessible to it.
So, but then that's what I'm saying. Now, what we are always suggesting, it's a community-based such kind of disposal system at source itself. Like in small areas, there has to be these kind of arrangements. Instead of bringing all things one place, and suppose when these treatment plants undergo maintenance, at that period they close down.
Yeah.
So during that what? Or maybe during some period that electricity or any problem comes and it stops work. So all things get halted. So that is one of the major issue. Third is about the rainy season. During rainy season it gets completely flooded.
During rain events, yeah.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that we have quite like the same rainy season that other parts of the world have.
Yeah. But still we saw that to now whatever the rain is happening, it's very erratic. One day it falls, but it's heavy rains. So that is the concern.
Yeah, and that's a concern for us in multiple ways. Like I said, about more than a half an inch of rainfall over a short period of time results in sewage discharges, and we've seen it. You can actually watch the water during heavy rain sometimes shooting out of there along with all of the other solids that are mixing with it. I think the concern of rain, of erratic rains and different types of rains have considerations related to this. They have considerations related to flood resiliency. Also related to our ability to move about or get through things. So a lot of these roadways, like we talked about, are built in low-lying areas specifically. The irony of New York City is the highest land in our city is used for graveyards.
Right.
So people who it matters least to are the most protected from some of these things. These are things that we're considering as part of our climate picture, and what the climate future.
Yeah.
Okay. So here you can see the tide pool, and you can see the structures that are inside the tide pool there. We had a number of people look at them with the designer in order to create it. I think one thing that it's decidedly missing is shade habitat. There's no like little nooks or crannies for things to crawl into, but it is textured. It does have different depths to it. The other thing that's unique about these tide pools, or interesting about these tide pools as a point of study, is that they're placed at different elevations. So some of them are already being naturally flooded during the tidal cycle, and others are only getting inundated by rainwater. And so we've tested this before, where we've looked at the salinity levels in each one to see what's going on there. As you move back from the tide, and Raphael Diatti has been working on eDNA testing of the tide pools.
Yeah.
As you move further up the slope here, you'll see these are the marsh plantings. So not all of them have taken as well as we would have hoped.
Okay.
But then planted within the restacked stone wall here are these coastal shrubs, which are working to, in some ways, help stabilize the soils in the shoreline here.
There are many such openings, are there?
Yes.
Yeah, all over.
But not all of them are CSOs, so you have to look for
But here there is green. There also we saw that green.
Yeah.
You said they are the CSOs.
Let's say, for example...
Yeah, those small ones. But they must be bringing some... but they are also bringing some water.
Probably bringing...
because of that opens.
If I had to guess, they're probably bringing drainage from the highway out.
Yes.
And because we're a tidal system, one of the things that we've experienced is when we have heavy flooding events during high tides, we get a plugging effect in our drains, which causes the salt water to push in one direction and the fresh water has nowhere to go. So even when, as a coastal city, we do have separate systems, we run into the problem where the stormwater systems themselves can back up into the streets and infrastructure, which is what happened to Randall's Island on the 30th or 28th of September. Legacy contaminants. That comes not only from what we use to fill in the shorelines, but also being located so close to a highway. It brought in contaminants like lead before they started using unleaded gasoline and things like that. We originally wanted to create what was known as a racked shoreline, so like a sloped beach going down into the shoreline. Because there were soil contaminants, we realized that if we were to do that, we would have to be responsible for dealing with all of these contaminants that we didn't have the budget, resources to deal with. So instead, the landscape architects, along with a number of
These sites, whatever the structure is, that is also of that tide pool material or no?
No, that's the historic seawall that was here. So these stack stones
Because they look to be new, sort of like as if newly placed, these ones. So that's why I thought that they are also the same.
Because of the contaminants that were in the soil, rather than scooping them out and then having to deal with transporting the problem out, we decided to pilot phytoremediation techniques.
Okay.
So what you're watching here is our part of our phytoremediation project, where these species were selected based on indications that they had done well integrating certain contaminants.
Not able to hear you what you are saying.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, you have to turn this side.
Spot over here.
Yes. So this is like a phytoremediation you were saying. Okay.
So while we are here,
Okay.
this was supposed to be a racked beach. Because of legacy contaminants that were in the soil, we determined that it wasn't worth it for us to scoop out and have to ship out all of those contaminants. It would have been cost prohibitive for us as well. So we decided to pilot or pioneer certain in situ treatments through various phytoremediation techniques. The trees that we just passed through, as well as all of the grasses here in this meadow that's surrounding behind you, have some indication, not necessarily conclusive evidence, but some indication from previous studies that they had the ability to either uptake, degrade, or stabilize various contaminants that were in the soils. And so the main points of concern here were lead, which we were hoping to either uptake or stabilize, and specifically PAHs as an organic contaminant that we were hoping the rhizosphere of these plants would help us break down into less harmful components.
Right.
We were able to get funding in order to study this, and we did this with a group of partners from Brooklyn and Queens colleges, where we were looking at the mechanisms and the levels of these contaminants in the soils. We did not find conclusive evidence that we had significantly reduced or broken down any of those things, but it's certainly ripe for, it was only over 1 year, certainly a ripe topic for us to revisit in 5 to 10 years and see if we found any other movements. And one of the other challenges is because these soils are so mixed or heterogeneous, we found that even during the construction, something that was a hot spot was so localized to be within a foot or a few inches of itself that as soon as you moved it in one direction or another, that spot may have ceased to have been a hot spot, but there might have been another hot spot that developed. Or because things were done over time, there might be different layers that had different levels of contaminants on them. And so I would say one of the things we learned from the phytoremediation study was the challenges in working with soils that have these kinds of histories and being able to isolate and break down the contaminants.
What is the bridge name? This bridge name?
This is the RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. This is the Manhattan Span
Robert F. Kennedy Bridge.
Yeah, formerly
Okay.
known as the Triborough Bridge.
Okay. One thing I just wanted to ask that did you try with this this phytoremediation with different kind of plantation. Because what were the type of plantations which you did, and before doing to understand
the species?
Yeah, species, because some species has got a very good what I must say, that it's a property to absorb more pollutants and all, and even the soil condition can become good.
Yeah.
So one thing that. Secondly, we also try with bioenzymes.
Yeah.
We spray the bioenzymes.
So bioenzymes not going to break down lead necessarily, right? It's not going to break down metals.
No. I'm not
so
saying that.
We're looking at the organic
richness of the soil, enzymes.
We're looking at the organic contaminants
Yeah.
that
Yes.
we break down. So that's why I just want to separate that there are two problems that we have here. One of the metals and one of the organic contaminants. And the metals are a different problem, and the organics require different treatment. So with the organics, we applied various iterations of compost tea over the length of the construction project in order to enhance the soil microbial activity. There was meager evidence that actually increased soil bacteria. One of the things that we actually had tested was DNA analysis of our soil samples, so we could see which communities of organisms we were finding here. As a result of that, we also targeted, I believe there were 2 species that we were using in this particular spot, in these plots, to look for that in the meadow. And then there's about 3 or 4 species of trees that were selected in the wooded areas to help break down those contaminants. And none of the sites showed a measurable decrease in contamination after the 1-year study was done. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, but then what about native variety plantations, native variety?
So everything you're looking at here, other than the invasive species that
Yeah.
have stuck their way in,
Yes.
is a native variety plantings. But what you're looking at right now is mostly switchgrass, Panicum virgatum, which is a native biomass-producing grass to a coastal grassland here in the eastern United States, northeastern United States. We used a fescue and Panicum as the test species for the phytoremediation study. So those in and of themselves were not only ones that, in the Panicum, that was specifically native, but had also...
Which is the 2 species?
So
Which one?
This is your Panicum virgatum here,
This one.
switchgrass,
What is it? Panicum?
virgatum, and
Virgatum.
then Chewing's fescue, or sorry, red fescue, fescue rubra would be this one here.
So these small ones?
Yeah, this green grass, the grass
Okay,
that's still
green
green
one.
here.
Okay.
Yep. And those were used together in order to support the bioremediation study with a number of academic partners.
Chris, would you like to come in from the inlet or just straight through over the berm? Does it matter to you?
Whatever's easiest for you guys. And then you won't see this with me, but Ashley and Doug will take you to it. It's a site called, or it's a project that are called intertidal objects that were done by Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute students.
Okay.
Who designed various sculptures. They did not use e-concrete, they just used regular concrete for them, but they put them along the shoreline. They're supposed to be able to recruit various organisms to them. And they're piloting this as an alternative riprap material for urban shorelines. So again, a hybrid of gray and green infrastructure.
Oh, circus also happens here.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a real circus, though. Those islands were filled in the same period that we were talking about all of the other shoreline fills in. Historically, this is the northern edge of Randall's Island here. On the other shore from us, across the inlet here, would have been the southern end, or the northern end. Sorry, this is the southern end of Randall's Island. The other side would have been the northern end of Ward's Island. And in between the two would have been a channel, approximately this width, that would have gone straight through over in this direction. Like a ball cap on the bridge over there.
Yeah.
You see that? And there's another ball cap you can kind of see poking out on the top of the bridge on that direction.
Yes.
In between the two would have been where there was a channel separating the islands. The bridge was built before they were filled in.
Okay.
After they were filled in, this was filled in with a bunch of garbage. I'm actually going to take you this way. A bunch of debris, let's call it. And then that debris was built at such a level that it sort of turned into a volunteer forest. Hey, oh!
What is that bird?
Kestrel bird kill.
Kestrel bird.
I've been seeing a lot of kestrels the last few weeks.
Oh, good. I've never seen it catch a hawk in, or not a hawk, a sparrow in. Man, why did I go and lock the gate? I'm so upset. I've only seen them catch grasshoppers. Oh man.
So I'm going to show you a section here. Give you an example of what this was filled in with. Watch your step coming down.
Yeah.
Look down here, you can see an old car.
Yeah.
The steering wheel,
Yeah.
the front drive,
Yeah.
the engine block, all of that's what used to be in here. What we did was, in 2008, with a mixture of funding, we came in here and we scooped out the built-up fill material so that the site would be properly flooded. An East Coast salt marsh like this needs to be flooded twice a day. You can see the brown line on the grasses is where the mean high tide is washing up to the site here.
Okay.
And I'll talk about the zones of the marsh in a little bit. But we have our sort of subtidal zone here. This could actually be intertidal. Subtidal's really out there. But in here we'll get this channelization of small minnow fish. As we move up to the mudflat, you can see there's mammal footprints, likely raccoons, that are looking around for rib mussels that are in the site here. You may also be able to make out holes, which are our fiddler crab burrows.
Right.
It's a little cold for them, I think, today, but they are in there. And then as this zone gets flooded up, you get into the intertidal rocky zone, where we're going to find even more ribbed mussels and invertebrates that are living amongst them in those rocks there. So now let's walk down to the pathway so we can see the trail here before, but also to provide access for education programs, people to come and enjoy the space. You'll see we've put together interpretive signage. As I mentioned before, this is a demonstration salt marsh. And I say demonstration because the scale at which you would need to have a truly healthy, fully functioning natural system is something that does not exist. The potential for it does not exist readily in the New York City environment, nor do I foresee it happening in any point in the near future. This was one of the first salt marshes to return to New York City.
But why it is, last time also I asked why it is written as ice rescue ladder.
So at some point the water will start to freeze. And while this probably isn't the highest risk place in New York City to fall in the ice, anywhere where there's public access to the water needs to get an ice ladder sign set up. So if someone did first say, come down here and break in there and we needed to safely get them out, then someone would be able to grab that ice ladder, get them out. And that goes up from November to March, April. So now that we come down here into this trail, we've got our our tide pool here. So this is a large, more natural type of tide pool.
What is these birds?
These are house sparrows.
Okay, house sparrows only.
They're invasive. We do have a number of other sparrows that come into this site that are of interest to us. We can find foraging salt marsh sparrows in here, grasshopper sparrows. What was that? Fox sparrows. And they're using the grass seeds to feed up. These will be resident with us all winter, but a lot of migratory sparrows, particularly in the fall, are coming by and eating the seeds in order to fuel up their migration further south. It's one of the niches Randall's Island provides. Even our mowed sports fields provide ideal sparrow habitat, so we're one of the best places in Manhattan or New York County to find sparrows. A slightly higher marsh. Are you familiar with zonation?
Yeah.
So the tall grass here is the lower zone. This is the low marsh. As you move up, there are two different types of plants that are dominant in the high marsh. So one is, well, there's three, I guess, here. This is salt meadow hay or Spartina patens. There's also Disticulus spicata mixed into this, which is another type of similar grass. And then the other dominant plant is a plant called marsh elder, or Iva fructescens. So although all of this was planted to be low marsh, as sediment deposition occurred in the marsh, as is true in most marshes, it remained a dynamic system, and so just a few inches of change.
These plants are what kind of plants?
Those are the marsh elder.
Yeah, so what is the species name?
Iva fructescens.
Iva fructescens.
And then as you begin to move up the slope, we start to transition into more upland. So the seaside goldenrod, Solidago sempervirens, is the first species that we'll start to see in this upland habitat. We switch into the Panicum virgatum that we were looking at in the other site, and we start to see more domination of woody species like trees and shrubs as we move higher up, with the exception of the Iva fructescens, which can handle the brackish water. Yeah. There also used to be a serpentine channel that snaked through here. There still is the depression of the serpentine channel, but it's now gotten filled in by the low marsh. And again, if we had a true natural marsh system, we would have so many acres of marsh, and there would be only natural boundaries preventing it from shifting, that you would see those constant transitioning between deposition and erosion, retreat, and encroachment, retreat, and encroachment. Because this is boxed in on all four sides, it doesn't have any area for it to retreat in the face of sea level rise. It doesn't have a lot of space for it to transition between the different ones, but I would say as far as a human anthropogenic created system, this is about as dynamic and close to its artificial equilibrium that it will get to.
Times a week.
Yes.
So it's a schools come or colleges?
So our education programs primarily work with grades K through 12. However, there are diverse opportunity for colleges and secondary schools to come and do research projects. Especially in the summer, there are some really cool programs that Chris and our natural areas will work with Teachers College and research projects. But during the school year, we primarily prioritize, especially our neighbors in East Harlem and South Bronx and public schools, to come and do some immersive education within the salt marshes. So they will explore all topics which which align with New York City and state learning standards in scope and sequence. So ways that they engage with the salt marsh. We will talk about the ecology of the salt marsh, different organisms, the diverse array of organisms that can be found. We will sometimes go seining with groups, especially in the fall. We participate in Day in the Life of Hudson, which especially a neighboring school, our partner school, CP2 Elementary, that Chris has really built up a wonderful partnership with one of their teachers of always bringing out their students every year for that.
Like every year some study conducting, like monitoring ways, like if we can do or engaging some schools or colleges, so that regular monitoring is happening of this place, so that at the same time we are getting data, like how we are like to improvise on anything what we are doing.
Yeah, so like Ashley was mentioning, there's the program for elementary age students. They're not necessarily collecting as much data, but they are practicing skills of observation and how to really just be outside in the field and make observations or think about things that they might make observations about in the environment. As we get older through middle and high school and even college level, we have a research program that's tangential to our education program called Park Lab. And so that's a program where we have college students. You mentioned the Teachers College, which is actually high school students coming out for the summer. And we have groups like environmental policy grad students from Columbia coming out. We may have different types of invertebrate classes coming out from, we've had Queens College, Baruch College come out for those kinds of studies. But we also work with individual researchers. So at Bronx Community College, we actually have one student now who's working with us. Jake, yep. And Jake is doing his research here on the island. It's a little hard to make out, but about halfway between where we're standing now and the other side of the marsh, there are white PVC pipes in the grasses. They're almost, it's literally a needle in a haystack right now.
Yeah, I can see.
But those are the ribbed mussel beds, and so that's a project with Baruch College, SUNY Plattsburgh, Colby College, and Maine and Loyola in Chicago, where we're looking at the ribbed mussels' capacity to do denitrification in the marsh. We collect samples.
So ribbed mussels are there?
The ribbed mussels are there, yep. Ribbed mussels are naturally occurring throughout, but those were actually transplanted as part of, to create control plots for the study. We collect water quality samples every other week to test for nitrogen and phosphates with Baruch College, so we have an ongoing data set that's probably about 5 or 6 years old now of those samples. We have regular avian monitoring here, so twice monthly Doug and the team go out and collect data on harbor heron foraging, great egrets, snowy egrets, great blue herons, yellow and black crowned night herons, and occasional sandpipers that are coming here to forage. So we have an ongoing data set that's probably almost 12 years old on that. We do the fecal coliform testing or enterococcus testing here in
insects
during the May through October. We do pollinator surveys along the buffer here, where they're going out once a month and collecting data on what's in bloom and what insects are pollinating them. We were a part of Macaulay College's, so another secondary school or another college level school, Macaulay Honors College's annual BioBlitz last year, where we had teams of different taxonomic experts and students go out to do a full biodiversity catalog of the park in early September.
So is this reports are uploaded in our website? Is it there?
If you go to randallsisland.org and look for our Parkas Lab page, almost everything that I mentioned is listed there. And if it's not, it's something that we're either working on getting on there, you can reach out to us about.
Sure.
And then we also co-founded the East River Ichthyological Alliance with our partners at SUNY Farmingdale, or Farmingdale State College. And
I was in SUNY Farmingdale just 2 days back.
Did you run into Dr. Peter Park at all?
No, I was not aware.
Yeah. Well, next time, if you get back to Farmingdale, Dr. Peter
Which
Park,
department?
Biology.
Biology.
Yeah.
I was in biology department. I saw somebody teaching from outside. I saw, but I could not.
Did you see the giant fish tank setup that they had?
Fish tank, I did not see. They were dissecting frogs in the biology lab.
His big pride this last couple months has been getting a huge flow-through tank system set up in his lab.
Okay.
But with Dr. Peter Park and Brooklyn Bridge Park, we co-founded the East River Ichthyological Alliance, which created the first of its kind database of fish species and distribution found in the East River, including this.
Is it there in the Brooklyn College? They have maintained?
Not at Brooklyn College, Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Bridge Park. Okay.
And there is a website I can refer you to and some materials on
Yes,
that. We've had a couple
yes.
peer-reviewed publications.
That
as a
would be
result of
helpful.
That study. In a monarch tagging study where we
What tagging study?
monarch butterflies.
Acha, okay.
A few minutes here that I have to.
So if you, just because Kristen has a few moments.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just, yeah. Yes, Chris. Please go ahead.
So I can just take you down
Yeah.
here. This is another one of our, we call them the educational pathways. This is where we collect a lot of the water quality data, one of the main points that we collect that. We had other students as part of the same program that Jake was in, looking at aquatic vegetation that could be found along the rocks and shoreline, and another student who was doing a study in one of our other freshwater marshes, which is across the way from us here, and works to also support stormwater detention and at least a minimal level of natural treatment. Yeah. So any questions before I have to leave?
I am now happy that I could hear more of the things what I had come here for, and almost things have been
That's
because
a nuanced answer.
yeah, because there is some few companies which I have seen on the other side.
Yeah.
So I
do
am
you mean?
doubtful about
What do you
their
mean companies?
their industries. Some small units. I think some units are there.
Yeah. So there isn't. The other side of the Bronx is a more challenging space to work with because it is zoned as industrial and owned or leased by other entities. It's a lot easier to do natural areas restoration, of course, on parkland than
Ship what all we are doing for, it's like how we are trying to train them, like to become a change agent sort of, where they are more engaging themselves rather than not engaging themselves as a proactive member or the citizen.
Yeah, so as Chris said earlier, a lot of our programs, when they're touring through the space, it is like really sharpening and honing those observational skills. So looking at like one, just the detail and the whether it is through like insects or birds or the general ecology, what is benefiting from that. When terminology that was used earlier is when we're talking about this space, we can look at the environmental function of an area like a wetland, but also the services. So like how do humans benefit from that space, and if we're benefiting from it, it has to be a reciprocal process. So how are we caring for that too? So by learning what a function of the space is, and again the overall and like outside community impact, we can better learn how to care for it, or you have a better investment, or you're more incentivized, I should say, to do a deeper uncovering of that knowledge, but also to care for it.
Actually, now it is more important to sensitize our young generation, because they have to be said that what is the importance of water. Like everything we wear to whatever we are using or whatever we are traveling through or anything, everything requires water. And at the same time, at the pace at which biodiversity is degrading, and that all the portals where we get all these very handy information, like Living Planet report, that's a worldwide report which is available. And such things, if we share with the students, that just go through it. And importance of the interlinking and interconnectedness. I think that's very important today, that we should do with the students and make them understand, because it's their future which is in turmoil.
Absolutely. And we're going to be around too, and definitely want to talk more about that with you. But I think at this point,
I apologize.
Yes. So you were in India and you have gone to Gujarat, Maharashtra,
And in Gujarat in particular, we were looking at effluents from industry and as it was draining out, and the treatment process or lack thereof for that material.
and about the agriculture you said.
With agriculture, looking at the challenges that the farmers were dealing with as it related to using engineered seeds, having to keep up with cotton prices and increased yields, and sustaining the watering of their crops in the semi-arid region. So the difference of using traditional seed, which was better adapted to surviving in arid conditions, versus higher producing but engineered seeds, which were costing more for inputs, were not part of a legacy seed that could be passed down. You had to buy them every year in the inputs, and the economic impact that was having on farmers losing their land.
So that was only for the corn or anything else also?
For cotton.
Cotton.
Specifically, we were looking at cotton
Corn.
in Maharashtra, but yeah.
Because I found this corn in UP, Uttar Pradesh. Lot of sweet corns, American sweet corns.
Sweet corn. No, this was like cotton, like the fabric.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Quote that really stuck with me. It's by Khaled Pishon Battle. She is an environmental justice policy influencer and advocate down in the South. I believe in the bayous of Louisiana. But it's in context of environmental, or the environment kind of being viewed through this lens of like, oh, I'm like going out and, restoration or conservation projects being this kind of separated thing, talking about like the mountain conservation, or talking about like beach habitat and whatnot. But it kind of creates this, this idea, this dissonance of they're separated away from us. So this quote is, the environment is not somewhere that you go to visit on the weekend. It's, where you live. Like everything that you do has an impact. So for here, when people think about, being out in nature, sometimes that what might immediately come to mind is like going up into the Hudson Valley, or like going for hikes and exploring those more forested areas. However, what we are doing in protecting that watershed and our water quality here, the water quality is affected by that larger cycle. So if we're not protecting our waterways here, if we're not conscious of how much water we're using in New York City, we go through over 1 billion gallons of water every day. It could be a diminishing, or it is a diminishing resource. So again, every choice or every impact, or you will always impact the environment through your day-to-day choices. You can have a bit more of what way that impact goes, whether it's more of a positive or a negative. And especially when we're at the farm, talking about food systems, whether it is a more localized or industrialized system, and some of those impacts there as well. So I'm going to try and even work with a lot of CBOs, or community-based.
What is these? These are what it is happening, composting?
This will be different, like mulch sites. They're usually more so under the bridge. So mulch and composting sites are just like a resource site that our horticulture department will use a bit more.
Which department?
Horticultural. So any like large mulching deliveries, and maybe Doug, you might know more or better than I, but large mulching deliveries will be dropped off there and then distributed throughout the islands.
We drop off a lot of the organic waste that we make when we pull weeds or cut down trees or branches. We drop it off there, and the Parks Department will spend a mile it to keep it compacted, and they mulch up a lot of the tree branches for use whenever it needs service. So trying to keep reusing the materials as far as we get.
this bridge is what name is?
That is still. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That is still part of the RFK, or formerly known as the Triborough Bridge. So that's that small bridge that we saw earlier on the north end of the island. That is all one continuous stretch. And with stuff like what Doug was talking about with the wood chippings or like using branches, we'll do sometimes with our volunteer department we will do some service projects. So having students come out and do volunteer services, but like really having that educational component of it. So instead of just mulching tree beds with freshly made compost or mulch and whatnot, they're really getting more of that look of they're getting more of that look of what that mulch is doing in terms of water retention and filtration, as well as redirection of organic matter from a landfill to back into a space where it is like crucially important and highly beneficial. Doug, do you know how far over I need to go?
I would just wait.
Yeah, like on the
I believe they mostly are on the shoreline between this pathway and the bridge. So they're kind of spread around. So
Yeah, it looks pretty low. So you said, still go left.
I would make a left if we could just walk along the rocks.
Okay. Yeah, just tell me when I should park.
Yeah, I would just cut in and maybe park here across the
Oh, on the grass? Yeah, okay.
That's the path.
Yeah, as I got, yeah. I feel like we should just stay up here. There were a pair of osprey that looked as if they were building a frustration nest on the top of that structure or apparatus. And usually, or not usually, but it can be really hopeful for if they build like sites where they might build that frustration nest that they will revisit to build their nest again for the following season. However,
Which one? The center one?
yes, yeah.
What
However, they did not come back.
What is that nest you said?
So it's called a frustration nest.
Frustration nest.
Yeah.
Why is it called so?
So it's a bit more of like an anthropomorphic like labeling of it, but after raptors like ospreys, they'll have their nest, and if their initial nesting site is unsuccessful, and their clutch just doesn't hatch or it's disturbed for whatever reason, they will later in the season build like a secondary nest or a frustration nest out of like still some biochemical or I guess that need for reproduction.
And these stones I see, they have been brought and put on the sides.
I'm sorry?
These stones.
So
These are, I think, separately put on the sides.
Yeah.
Because natural ones are the one which is there inside.
Yeah,
So what is the reason?
They were placed here. I unfortunately don't know the specific reason other than maybe what Chris was talking about of like creating that softening of an edge of more of a natural habitat when it was built out, whether that was done with intention or
Happy accident.
yeah. I unfortunately I do not know the specific.
I'm going to keep walking down just to see if I can spot where they are.
Yeah, we'll walk with you. But I know it's a mixture of inland marble and there's some schist. Oh, it looks like
Fish scales.
Yes, just fish off.
And here I think some opening is there of the drainage opening or something. Here you can see from underground.
Yeah.
And it's being released here directly.
There are a
So this spot also needs to be studied then,
yeah,
for what it is being brought.
Right there, yeah. I can
Huh?
So you can get a better look at it from that angle there.
Yeah.
Always worth studying. But yes, Chris was saying it's more so it's all about green water, but because if it were a CSO, they would have to have something site.
Yeah. But why is it so much dark on this side? See, on the sides it is too much dark. Water, if you see.
The rock
Yeah.
lettuce.
Yeah.
of like the plant matter on there, or
No. Beyond that, that water I'm saying, on the sides you see more darker water.
yeah, okay.
Maybe that algae are there down?
There could potentially be algae, or I'm not sure what they said.
Or else I don't know whether if something is flowing from here and that's making this zone dark or something like that. I don't know exactly. That
Yeah.
needs to be studied. See, so much of rats are there. Could you see?
Yes.
Rodents are there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, along all of these projects, especially when it's not this stacked or whatever, as Chris said, it creates nooks for life, and sometimes that life is rats. Down here on the south end of the island, this is a very popular destination for families and parties. And
So on Saturdays, Sundays it must be full.
yes, it does lessen out when there's a little tidal pool.
I think these are put only because of sea erosion happening.
yeah,
Cuts on the
there's not
sides.
that
So probably
soil
because of the
stabilization.
safety that they are putting it more. This. And these are the tide pool ones, or I think so.
So I don't think that this is. Well, I think they come down to check it. That would be a
Stacked.
question for Chris. I mean,
Yeah.
it is serving as a tide pool site.
Because he was telling that they are the stacked ones, no? The stacking sort of only
yeah,
this
where they
taking.
have those designed blocks.
Yeah,
with
probably
the,
for that
new
only.
material. That might just be
Yeah.
not natural, but an occurring tide pool based off of the rocks or the rock wall was created originally. But I could double check with Chris on that as well, if there are any, or if there is any research data. But yeah, so the human impact is definitely a huge aspect. Again, like a lot of anglers, but a lot of the waste. And while we said there's a dedicated staff, it's a collaboration between Randall Island Park Allaince and the New York City Parks Department that helps clean this area. But as well as our volunteers. Lyle Croft is our volunteer coordinator. They have very specific projects where they're coming down just to get the microplastics out of the soil.
Yeah.
Especially the literal, like, hundreds of pounds. I dare say, like, over, the history of all of it, like tons of bottle caps. Are you able to see any?
Yes,
Okay.
my mistake. They're further down than I realized, but it is more spread out.
Yeah, but from where this is brought and why this is brought, we should have these information, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And-
So the structures that we're looking at, this is
Yeah.
an example of one right here. You see how it's
Yeah.
kind of has an interesting shape to it?
Yes.
That's what was installed specifically for what Chris was talking about before.
The tide pools.
Yeah, they're not tide pools, but they are, that kind of different surface materials to try
Okay,
to
they are
attract
put in.
marine life to
Okay.
live on. There's one there. You can only cut and see because you have to walk out on the rocks.
Yeah. Because I can see the erosion happening on the sides, and probably that is the reason that these stones are being put.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because
It
here I could
reinforces
see
the
up to
shoreline.
here the cut of the river. This is happening.
And I can say with 100% certainty, so this is actually called the Hellgate Channel. This is one of the swiftest moving channels, I think, in the New York Harbor region.
Yeah.
At certain times of day, it's basically like rapids through here. So there's a lot of erosion concern, and that's almost certainly why the rocks were put here
Yeah.
as protection against that. In fact, in the 1800s, this entire channel was dominated by rocks, and it caused a lot of accidents and a lot of
Okay.
shipwrecks and things. So there was
Okay.
this massive engineering task, I
Okay.
believe in the 1880s, where they used dynamite to explode a lot of the rocks here
Okay.
and clear open the channel for shipping.
Oh, okay.
You can actually still see that island that Ashley was talking about that used to have the
Yeah.
osprey nest.
Yes.
That's a channel marker to warn ships from going too close to shore where there's still rocks
Okay.
to stay further out into the channel.
Okay.
But there's another one of those, the structures right there.
Down inside.
Yes, the
Yeah.
one this kind of
What is
triangular
this
looking-
kind of algae which are there? Algae.
I'm not entirely certain. I can't speak
Okay.
to that. If I'm being
Okay.
honest.
Only because such cuts which or erosion which is happening very drastically. Okay.
Thankfully, no one was hurt.
Wait, that was.
That was my first year here. So
Okay.
that was.
Oh, not. That was like
I forget
Jupiter.
if it was Ida or Isaias.
Yeah. Wait, was it Isaac?
Maybe it was Isaac. They were all I names too, which doesn't help.
Yeah.
It was Ida, Isaac, and Isaias were all like within a year and a half of each other. I forget which was which.
Lighting within the island. And actually, right now it's really cool. Because this might be a New York State first. Typically during migration, and I mean just in general, the only kind of hummingbird that you will see on the eastern coast is the ruby-throated hummingbird. But through this project, this was started through our horticulture department. Our former hort manager, Veronica. She had.
So this is all bird watchers.
So these are all bird watchers because there is again a potential first of the dark-cheeked or black-chinned hummingbird, which is typically a west coast bird, but has been possibly confirmed for hanging out here. Hey, Sierra. He's worked with the public education, and he, especially Dr. Dande, was working, doing research into the Wards Island wastewater treatment. And yeah, so in our education programs came up, and we've talked about the urban farm, and I know Elena brought up the urban farm on her initial visit, and we're really excited to come in here and learn from you.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, it's a funny time to visit the farm because just last week we really closed up everything, pretty drastically. So, you can try to picture what the summer looks like here. And all of these beds are filled with vegetables.
What do you mean by hand washing station?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just where the kids will wash their hands, and also, our water is probably off for the season, but this has a bunch of holes, and if every kid picks a carrot, they could also each gather around here and wash their carrot.
Okay.
So we, during the season, have a lot of signage out here that kind of explains what we do, but I'll do my best to just describe what it looks like.
So on this only you put the plantation, and what is the period of doing that plantation?
What is the what?
Which period you do? Because now you said you close down.
Right. So in this area, we're looking at, the warmest months that we have. And so typically we're growing in the field from March through last week, which was, I guess, mid-November.
March to mid-November.
Yeah.
Okay.
And within that, July, August, September, October, those are really the times where we're producing a lot. And so we are an educational farm. So as Ashley said, and probably some others, we primarily focus on educational programs. And so a few times a week, students come to the farm and split up and do activities on the farm with our staff. They will help us plant. They will help us harvest. They'll come into this area, which is typically set up as a kitchen, and we'll make a stir fry, or we'll make, some simple salad, things like that. And we're learning kind of the basics about nutrition, but really just about eating from the land. Right, and we grow over 200 varieties of fruits and vegetables and herbs, and so we're always trying to grow crops that are both familiar and unfamiliar to people. So things that are familiar, cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, every kid is going to be, mostly aware of those vegetables, but they might not know how it's grown. So here they'll get to see, a tomato growing up tall on a trellis, all of that.
But then every year you close down every year, then you grow.
Yes.
So how it will become big by the time student comes, or you can see the plant? Do you bring it just directly harvest like big plants and put it here?
So we start all of our seeds ourselves. We have this small greenhouse here, and then inside the bathroom area over there in a closet, we have we have lights and heating mats, and so we'll actually start our first seeds at the end of January. So our onions we start early, and then the kids that come early on in the spring, they don't see so much growing, but they do help us plant. So some things they'll see, some things they won't, and it totally depends on the year, or on the time of year.
They'll always have lemon balm or
we always have
sorrel.
lemon sorrel. Exactly. We could go this way and see that. for us, we work really directly with our community in a lot of different ways. So one, of course, is just we're working with the kids.
Okay.
But then also every week we donate our produce to a food pantry in East Harlem. So we drive over the bridge. This year we donated about 3,300 pounds of food. And so we also work with that pantry to determine what they're interested in receiving. So if we, a few years ago we gave them a lot of cucumbers and then they told us they're not so interested in the cucumbers. So now we make sure our kids are eating the cucumbers and so on and so forth. We have raspberries over here, which surprisingly are actually producing. So if anyone wants to taste a raspberry, it's there. Absolutely. Feel free to pick one. It's delicious.
I will also grab.
Sour. Totally yummy.
So much here. Raspberries.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they're.
Yeah, they're quite juicy.
Yeah. This is another plant that is really
There's spinach?
It's not spinach. It's lemon sorrel. You can feel
Lemon?
Yes. Here, you could taste it. It's gonna taste a little sour. Doesn't have much of a smell, and the kids absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, right?
Good.
Yeah. And so the kids that come early in the season when there's not much going on, this is always here. It's a perennial, so it comes back on its own. We've been also piloting and trialing a mushroom growing program. So we have shiitake mushrooms growing on the logs, and you actually could see some of
Little
them.
are there. No, few are there.
I'm trying to remember which high school, but this past spring, high school students
Yes,
helped plug
they
some
did.
of them, but y'all
And volunteers
so
did the
much,
rest. Yeah. There's a few plants that we are going to grow throughout the winter and kind of just experiment, see what happens. So cilantro.
Is this coriander?
It's cilantro, so yeah.
Cilantro, coriander.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna probably will give us some coriander. Yeah. We have grapevines all the way across the We also, we try to think of all the ways that we'll connect with the community, and so something we've been doing the last couple of years have also been growing a lot of flowers, and so we'll do flower arranging workshops with folks on the weekends. We also host volunteer days, so adults can volunteer with us every Sunday throughout that growing season, so kind of April through October. And they'll help us with everything. A lot of weeding, a lot of composting. This is our compost system over here. So we collected about 3,500 pounds of food scraps this year and turned it into finished compost. So this isn't quite ready yet. It's still pretty hot in there. But by next season, we'll plan on sifting it over on this table and
sieving it then.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to use it.
It's a nice July day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then over here looks different than it would during the season. With
Rice.
these beds typically.
Okay.
There's a lot of lotus growing there, and typically we would have our upland rice in these beds, and then we'd flood the
Right
patio.
now this is something else?
It's
here?
spinach.
Spinach only?
Yep. So we have the spinach there that's going to grow through the winter. We'll be putting plastic over
Over
this.
this. Okay.
And so we're just growing.
Otherwise you grow rice.
Otherwise,
see
right.
that.
Typically we grow rice, and you can see the old rice in here.
This is onion?
Those are chives, yes. Yeah, so
I'm
there's
very much interested in gardening, so I know.
awesome. And actually, I see that there's
Yeah,
some
the
rice.
rice.
Yeah, awesome.
This is funny.
Rice
I've
can
never
be-
seen that happen.
Yeah. Rice is already there.
Yeah, and we already harvested this, so it's interesting.
It's having a late production. Huh?
Still it is
having
coming.
like a second production somehow. I've never really seen that. But typically this would be flooded, so there'd be water up to there. Yeah, and we work with a school right over the bridge. When they're in first grade, they come to the farm, get to know us, get to know the space. In second grade, they plant the rice, and then in third grade, they harvest it and cook with it or eat rice dishes from around the world. It's called our Taste of Rice program, and we have a few videos we could probably share from that program.
So in this, what you do?
So those are new beds this year. We really just grew a lot of different crops, a lot of variety in there. I'll be spending some time this winter figuring out exactly what we want to do.
It's a garden.
Is it?
It's bigger garden.
Yeah. And we have grown bitter gourds before, yeah. Yeah. So it's probably just reseeded itself.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, especially with our gourds. Yeah. Any other questions?
No, but this is very good that this kind of places are created for making children more interested in all these things, and if they are coming, how often they come?
So we typically only see students once or twice in a season, but for a few of our programs we see them a few times each year. So
which grade are more you see that they like to come here and the schools are bringing?
I would say all grades are interested in coming, but just due to how the class schedules work, we do work more so with the younger grades, so primarily elementary, some middle school. However, we have been working more with high school groups, and especially trying to get some recurrent high school programs happening. This past season, we actually had it's a kind of a new or growing partnership with a school over in East Harlem, where they have a transitional education service. So having students who are on the spectrum or various different disabilities or educational disabilities who benefit from longer time in school, so ages 18 through 21, and then them coming over into the island for more of a volunteer capacity, and also like tasting foods, exploring again a meal using all senses, so like taking a holistic approach to it, and we've been working with them. They'll come out. So far in this last year, it's our first year, but they came out 4 times throughout the school year, so twice in the fall, twice in the spring.
Early childhood students also come? Because I know they like to sow seeds and all else, plantation.
Kids? Oh, yeah.
Very small kids.
Those are the majority of our field trips.
Yeah.
And then, absolutely. First grade, kindergarten. They'll take little watering cans. They have a lot of fun kind of with the hands-on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the summer, we also work with the Summer Youth Employee Program and have usually 4 to 6 high school staff members too. So our high school kids work with us in the field every day. So those are the kids that we actually work closest with on the most regular basis.
Sarah knows like a program or an activity or just a focused topic of like what they can do outside of their visit. So that idea of like stewardship and something that you and the educators or something that happens on the farm is talking about food systems and how we contribute to the industrial system or a localized system. And I think it's a cool aspect that happens here.
Yeah, especially with the older kids, and when I say older, I'm talking about like 4th grade and up, so still pretty young. But we talk about food systems, and we talk specifically about how we all participate in that industrial system. That we all. Maybe we go to the bodega on the corner. Maybe we go.
But this raised bed system, how did it come up, and whose ideas, and how did we create this? Why it is a raised one instead of going to?
So raised beds are very common in the city and community gardens, and also in farms like this because the soil in the city is contaminated. So if we were to dig, the soil in the field here, or really just under the farm, and test it, there would likely be a lot of lead and a lot of arsenic, a lot of heavy metals just from years of using lead paint, from exhaust from the train and from the cars. And so raised beds are a way to grow safely in soil in the city, and so we have to purchase all of the soil that goes into these beds. We have to build all the beds, and then underneath here, if we dig, we have landscape fabric. So we have a barrier between the city dirt and what we're growing in, so that whatever we're growing is safe to eat, safe to touch, safe to work with.
So these are the sprinklers which are there?
We have a drip irrigation system, yep. And so you can kind of see it. It's all connected underground. And it's on a timer, and it goes off however much we need at any point in time.
There in one bed you have those plants still there.
Watermelon radishes. So
Watermelon radishes.
Yeah, they do pretty well over the winter. And so we're kind of just letting them get a little bit bigger.
We can pull out one and see
how
that radish looks down.
Absolutely.
And here I think it is that what you call it as peas. No, chickpeas.
It's that is a chickpea. Wow, that's funny. Yep, we were growing chickpeas early in the season.
So that's a chickpeas there also.
So you know all of your all of your plants.
Yeah.
A few survived. They didn't do well this year at all.
So this is
is a watermelon radish.
Oh. First time I'm seeing watermelon radish.
Yeah, they get really big, and if we cut it open, I don't have my knife on me, but you'll see inside it's really, really pretty. So we'll take it back with us and we can
okay.
Open it up.
I'll carry this. So these flowering plants, you put it on the sides?
Yeah, we put it on the side. It's nice, aesthetically.
Yeah.
Brings in pollinators, absolutely.
Yeah. Very nice.
And in that
and why this solar panel sort of small? This is put. What is the reason?
Which one? The solar panel?
One.
Yeah. So the solar panel is powering a fan behind the bin that pushes air through these PVC pipes that we can see here.
Okay.
Yeah. And we still find that we need to do manual turning. We still need to do a lot of labor, but technically that should provide some more oxygen to the pile.
What is this for?
This is another compost system. So this is called a tumbler.
What is it called? A tumbler?
It's called a tumbler, yeah.
Okay.
And it tumbles, right?
Okay.
And we haven't been using it too much, but it's the same concept as what's over there. We're mixing our food scraps in with our carbon materials, with our leaves, with newspaper, and it's breaking down into compost. And we like having kind of two examples of how to create compost.
So how many days do you have to keep it that it will become compost?
I have no idea how long this one takes, but this one, in the height of the season, it's about 1 month in each of those phases. So 3 months until we have a finished product from banana peel to compost. 3 months.
3 months.
Roughly. And that's when we're working really hard to get it there. I would say a little bit longer.
Okay.
More likely.
So urban farm concept, who started with it?
Who started it here?
Yeah.
So this has been around for a little over 10 years, and it actually started as a 5 senses garden by our horticulture team. So our gardeners on the island were interested in growing herbs and other kind of exciting plants for little kids to enjoy, and it started actually where we're about to walk, so in between these hedges, under these trees. But this area is also hard to grow in because it's very shady. And so eventually it just started to expand. And really throughout the city there are not a lot, but there are a good number of farms, educational farms that are doing similar work to us, and then urban farms that are actually selling their produce. And so, it started kind of at the same time as many of the others started throughout the city, so inspired by the times.
Wow. Very nice concepts. Very much needed, these kind of things for exposure to students.
Yeah, and when we have students visit, I mean, it's really incredible just what excites them. It's really every little thing is exciting because it's all so new.
Yeah.
And we'll have little kids get excited by different colored carrots and different sized tomatoes. And, when you go to the store or you're at home, you see one of everything. There's not so much variety.
Students and whatnot. Y'all grow the two primary kinds of, maybe two is limiting, and please correct me, but there's melons. So again, that idea of like, oh, a different kind of produce or cucumber than what you're seeing, as well as beans. And this is like fully covered with the vining, the leaves, the produce. Students will and the public will walk through this space and just be able to literally pick the produce hanging over them. And just again, that idea of like fully immersing yourself in your food.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you some pictures of it alive.
Yeah, you share some pictures with me. Yeah.
There's actually
So that will give me an idea that at the
I wonder if they're good.
Yeah, they're probably not.
But this is what it would, well, a bit more
Okay.
inverted.
It's also called a Mexican sour gherkin, and it's just it's a little kind of sour cucumber.
cucumber. Okay.
Tasty. If you're saying there, you have a.
So they hang from here.
They hang from here, and we have I have a picture of a little kid.
Yeah, lot of
standing
our.
in it.
That is why there is lot of already there up.
Jumping
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know the picture. Absolutely.
So this also is hanging.
Yeah.
See,
So we'll
see
grow
those
dried
beans. Yeah, beans are there.
string beans.
Yeah. Okay.
All of the fruit trees, but I think there were 14 that were put in that summer. Oh, there's a farm
Small cat.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not
She
seen
looks
that
to be
cat before.
pregnant.
Looks to be pregnant.
I think so.
Oh yeah, no, she
Oh,
does
wow.
look like it. It's like a flattened tail. Yeah, that's a new cat to me. And Ciara did not speak to it, but that gray shed back there used to be chickens that were housed on the farm.
Okay.
I forget how many they had.
They are doing some plantation there. If you can walk and see there, something they are doing.
Oh, do you want to go see?
Yeah, little go and see there.
Okay. Go. When there was some soil testing and found that they wanted to remediate the soil due to levels of lead, as well as like expand that area.
So what they used to do for the remediation?
That I don't have a concrete answer on. I think it's kind of just like renovating the area. Chickens came up, so we were talking about the chickens.
Yes.
But so for the remediation process or just like reconstruction process, I don't have a solid answer on. I think it's just going to take some time before the chickens do come back out, or if they do come back out.
Yeah, we're not looking to remediate the soil. That would take many years. So we'd be looking to do what we do for our beds, which is bring in fabric, cover the dirt.
But little I will suggest if you can try with making some bioenzymes. Bioenzymes are very easy to make. That is with the help of peel of any fruit. You can take citrus fruit or any fruit. Take the peel. 3:1:10 ratio. 3 is the ratio. 3 is the 3 grams if it is peel of the citrus or any fruit or any vegetable waste. 1 is the portion of the jaggery. Jaggery, you know?
Yeah.
Jaggery, and then 10 portion of water.
And what does that do? What are the bioenzymes?
So when you mix it and keep it for 90 days as it is, you will find that after 90 days, initially for 15 days, you will have to lose the cap of it. And after that you have to tightly close it and keep it for 90 days. You will find that all that what was there as a peel and all, they will settle down as a slurry. And a very clear solution will be there on top. So that's your bioenzyme. So just 1 ml of that, add again 10 ml or 100 ml depending upon how much you want to cover the area. Accordingly then you spray on that and you see that the soil enrichment will be there. Microbial biodiversity will be better.
Interesting.
So you try that because you have enough of space. You have to just keep one drum here, drum or
So
a
it's
big
kind of like
container.
a compost tea? Is it like a compost tea?
Yeah, it's like you are getting a bioenzyme solution that is also used as a sanitizer. You can use it as a cleanser, like cleaning the house, even for our face and everything. So that can be used easily. You have to dilute it and use it. You will see that a lot of good organisms, microorganisms will be there. Biodiversity will be good then of the microbes. So that you can try. In one portion, you try with that bioenzyme.
Right.
The soil can be, regenerated.
Yeah, for sure.
So regenerative process we have to start today. Instead of, how many beds you will make like this. Instead, we have to see also if you can make this soil better.
Yeah.
So try with this bioenzyme which I said. And it's very easy to do. You just bring a 5 liter or 1 liter bottle. 1 liter, otherwise also we drink some soft drinks and all.
Right.
So bring it, in that you put those peels, cut it and put the peels. So just 3, if you are taking 3 grams of that, 1 gram of jaggery and remaining 100 ml of water. Okay. That means 1 liter of water in that.
Got
One-
the recipe down.
Yeah.
I'd have to email
We'll
you
send
with
you
that.
photos. You could send us the recipe for it.
Yeah. So you will have to only lose the cap for 15 days initially and tight it,
Yeah.
because there will be fermentation.
Right.
So that because of that yeah.
That makes sense.
Cool.
So try with that. I think that would help. Falcons.
Yeah, peregrine falcons.
Okay.
It's really cool. Just that idea of I know a couple people there. Our bridges and our skyscrapers mimicking that native habitat of cliff faces along the coast, where falcons will find environments suitable enough, and luckily they have all of these pigeons flying around for an abundant food source. So yeah, this island serves as a really, again, just a multifaceted or like dynamic habitat, whether it's year-round or seasonal for a lot of bird species. And I've actually not been inside the wastewater
Yes.
treatment plant. We were trying to go last year, but unfortunately we weren't. There was a last-minute schedule change, and I know they just got a new commissioner too. So yeah, we're hoping to get in there. But this
See the
is-
smell coming.
Yeah.
You can feel it.
We can
See,
smell it.
see so much of smell it is.
This is part of.
And that side, there is academic, some ground is there. Yeah.
It's the NY, the New York FDNY, the Fire Department in New York. They have their training academy, where they do have some. They do have some training programs where they are creating little piping or piping through fires through piping to simulate a burning building and whatnot too. So that's really interesting.
I've always wanted to tour that.
Yeah. We had Big Truck Day. And that's actually, so that brings me up. So, I'm not sure if I told you, but we do, nearly 200 free public programs a year. A lot of them are large festivals, and many of those festivals do take place on the urban farm. So it is a huge front facing for our public outreach and education, whether it's talking about the urban farm specifically, or if we're doing this year we used to do a cherry blossom festival, which focused on, the significance and what cherry blossoms signify, but we transitioned into more of an Earth Day festival, which is also held out on the farm. And so just again, talking about human impact, we'll have different community partners come out, talking about their work, but also just free giveaways and just a fun time for families to do some passive or active education, depending on what their vibe is.
But here also this flows, right? That water which is coming from there,
Yes.
it flows through this places also.
So the way the swells are created is
Yeah.
that they go from north or south to north. Correct, Doug?
Yes.
Yeah.
They kind of make a U-turn
Yeah.
as they go from south to north, and then they curve back south again.
There is not a well, I don't know if it technically qualifies as a covert, but piping that will also funnel water in there as well for some filtration and absorption.
And a cockroach.
Cockroach.
Yeah. Oh man.
What kind of snake is it?
I think it might be.
Fish traps.
Yeah, so we have these little fish pots, so we use them to catch lots of times mummy chogs and silver sides, which are little schooling fish we have in the marsh.
Okay.
We show them to school kids on field trips. Lots of bio artifacts, nature artifacts, everything from insect nests to, crab shells and seashells and things you would find around the park in nature. We have all of our equipment that we use when we process water quality samples.
Right.
Tanks to store animals and things, and when we go fishing, monitoring equipment. So we have like a Kestrel, which it's wind speed and air temperature and
Okay.
stuff.
So you use sensors and probes also?
Yeah, absolutely. When
What
we do
is this
monitoring-
small
This thing?
binoculars like small?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So when we do field trips, we have lots of little binoculars, so children can have binoculars.
Okay.
If we're doing a bird watching program or something, all manner of arts and crafts and school supplies for
Okay.
children to have fun with.
Nice, very nice.
And when we do festivals and things too, so we can table and have activities for kids.
Good.
And more practical things too, water jugs. All that stuff is back here.
Good.
So,